to Finding Neutral, the hardest part about riding motorcycles. I'm Aaron.
I'm Travis.
And I'm Nick.
So I was watching YouTube today, and I came across a video from James Pumphrey, and his channel's called Speed. And he introduced this concept that I found pretty interesting. He came up with a formula for determining what's cool for a car. And what he says is cool equals style plus uniqueness plus popularity plus functionality. And I was wondering, can we apply that to motorcycles? He came up with a list of 9, and I don't think we should try to hit a certain number, but if you guys just shout out some motorcycles and we'll kind of discuss if they can qualify as cool using this formula, and I'm going to allow you to interpret the formula however you like as far as style, uniqueness, popularity, and functionality. That's what we say.
What's your first one, Nick?
Well, we already know that anything that I have to add to this conversation is 100% valid because I own one of the vehicles in his list. So therefore...
Oh, I forgot. If we're going to talk about that, what was the vehicle?
A Saab 900.
And what rank did it take on his list?
Number 9.
It was the first one mentioned.
Yes.
A Saab 900.
Cliche.
So, to give you credit, it is a cool car.
The ignition is between the seats.
Well, that's not particularly cool. A lot of European cars are that way. I think a lot of Mercedes were that way. And they had that big goofy key.
Well,
the big plastic key.
No. They never had a twistable key in the center.
Yeah, they did.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Uh-huh.
In no way, shape, or form.
Yes, sir.
False.
Come on, Nick.
Denied. They started putting the push button there. I will agree with that. And then Volvo had the little twist knob.
There was, I can't remember exactly which car it is, but it's a big goofy plastic key, and it went in the center, twisted in the center, and I can't remember.
The Saab 9.3 had the plastic key that didn't have any teeth on it.
There was something else too. I can't remember what it was. Anyways, what's going to be the first bike up for discussion?
Oh, this is up to me now.
If you want, I don't care. Travis can throw something out, but it's just going to be some Triumph thing. Or
He would say a street triple.
It is iconic, but
is it cool?
I don't know that it's cool. I mean, it is cool. I just don't know that it ranks as cool as some other iconic motorcycles.
Well, as defined, not by the formula, not by traditional rankings, if there is such a thing, or ones that have been mentioned by other folks. Just applying to this formula, does a Triumph Street Triple have style, have uniqueness, have popularity, and have functionality? I would say,
I don't think they're unique anymore.
Oh yeah, I definitely wouldn't say unique, and I definitely don't feel like they're.
It's not popular enough, sure.
For sure. In the American context, no, but in the European context, it's a very beloved bike over there. So I'd say it if we take that into mind, you could qualify it as popular. Unique, no. It's not defining of anything. It doesn't stand out. It kind of blends in. I don't think blending in that regard is a bad thing about the Triumph. One thing that always kind of sticks out for me that makes the Triumph a little more unique is how classy it is. And I think that's coming from the brand, their build quality, their design. It's very professional. It's very well made, and it's like a subtle design. They don't have to do all these sharp angular whatever. It's just, and it's a timeless design. It's going to look good for years. And
as long as you like the headlights. That's the one polarizing part.
I don't understand what.
Headlights.
I think the only people it's polarizing to are Triumph people. I don't think the rest of the market finds them polarizing. I feel like their headlight design. It's not like it's a KTM headlight.
But I think everybody feels the same way about
Like
those too.
the new Super Duke headlight looks like Predator with his mouth open. Like it's bad.
It's bad.
It's really bad. But
It's bad.
I've never cared because it's whatever. Like the Super Duke's still an awesome bike.
We don't buy that bike to look at the headlight.
Yeah, I don't buy it to look at that. And what's funny about it is like owning a Super Duke, my headlight was considered controversial when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Anymore, it's not controversial.
No, it's
like,
boring.
Like no, yeah, it's what's
compared
weird
to what
is,
else
like,
is around.
It's like no one cares about my headlight now.
Well, no, I prefer twin identical headlights to one like a Gixxer or the asymmetrical like the old BMW S1000s. I don't like that.
I love asymmetrical.
No.
I love asymmetrical.
No.
Yes. And my argument for asymmetrical comes down to
No.
how many sides of the bike is the exhaust on?
Well, it depends what bike.
How many sides of the bike is the chain on?
Well, how many sides is the swing arm on?
Single sided.
Opposite side of the chain.
It balances out. How
So-
many brakes? The front's got two, but the
Oh, no,
rear
it's
only
not on
has
the
one.
opposite side of the chain, is it? They're all on one side.
Asymmetrical is shit. So that's why, like, logically speaking, there's no reason to not like asymmetrical, but I know a lot of people hated the BMW, the original S1000, when it was asymmetrical on that front end and the lights looked all angry-eyed and goofy. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Could you put a locally hated sticker on the front of it?
Probably.
Okay.
And one of the headlights was low beam, one of the headlights was high beam,
Like Julie.
and similar, like a lot, the Honda CBR was that way.
A lot of bikes are that way. My bike's that way.
Yeah, and
The-
you wouldn't believe how many people are like, you got a headlight out, bro.
But but my Beamer does not.
It lights up both of them.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I think at least with DRLs. I haven't checked for the lights, but the high beam is terrible.
So like you'll get people telling you like headlights out, bro, and then I see discussions online about like how do I get my light to light or both lights to light up? And
There's
I'm
a
like,
button for it.
I'm like, but why do you feel like you need that? Like just let it. It's functional as is. Like it works perfectly fine. And when you're sitting on the seat behind the handlebars, you don't have to look at it. So who cares? Like just let it roll on. It doesn't matter what other people think of your headlight.
The part that bothers me about that is motorcycle headlights typically are not as good as car headlights. And both of my bikes, when you turn the high beams on, it turns the low beam off.
I don't like that.
And I find that dumb because
Yeah, I want to be able to
you're
see close and far.
You're reducing the amount of light you can throw out. But the headlights on a bike aren't that good. Anyways,
No, they're terrible.
they're definitely not as good as a car's headlights.
bad.
And cars are notoriously allowed to have both sets of lights on. They do have to turn the fog lights off when you turn the high beams on. But you do get lows and highs on at the same time.
I want lows and highs because I want to be able to
all
see.
the lights.
I want to see near and far. I don't want to see either or. You know,
and
I don't
what
like
doubly
that.
doesn't make sense is my Tiger, the fog lights, the cat eye road lights that come on it from the factory, stay on
With the high beams.
with the high beams. The low beam turns off,
yeah,
but the cat eye fog lights stay on still.
I'm gonna guess they're not considered fog lights. Like if there was a legal thing about that, they're considered
I
auxiliary
think they
lights.
call it a driving light
or
something of that
driving light.
nature.
That could be too. But the Triumph Street Triple, the style of it is classy, and I think that's cool. Uniqueness, the reason I would say no to unique is it doesn't do anything in that market segment that is particularly unique. It's very, I would say it's very average in the, at least on spec. Like
When the general design of the bike has been around since its inception 20 years ago, it's not really changed a whole lot. They've improved it and made it better, but no radical steps have been taken that were class defining or market leading in any nature. So it's just always been at the top of the range, but amongst all of the other bikes that are at the top of the range that are just normal.
And I think
bikes.
that can be part of the appeal to it, but it doesn't boat it as unique. As far as popularity, we already discussed that. In the U.S., I think they're gaining ground, but ultimately, I don't think that they're like on the, they're not topping everyone's charts. They're more a bike that's in the background, and there's a like a niche that is really interested in them.
Nothing motorcycle in America is volume.
Well, that too. Well, you could say Harleys are like American V-twin. That's the only thing that has like real genuine volume. And
But what is it, like 5,000 a year?
no, it's far more than that. It's not 1 million a year, that's for damn sure. But it's like, we'd have to look up figures, but I bet it's 50,000. I bet it's 50,000 or so. And then functionality, yes. Ultimately, like, I know it's not an adventure bike, so you're not going to be like, taking it off any sweet jumps. But as far as in its class, in its segment, is it functional for its design purpose and intent? Absolutely. Like, it's a very good handling, very good power, very comfortable, very smooth. It's a good motorcycle. But is it cool? I think what we've defined here is it's 3/4 cool. It's just missing that uniqueness. That's really the only thing that's like, that would really set it apart. And if you were to like think about, okay, like really unique middleweight naked bikes, that one isn't the first one I'd define. I'd define it as like, well, the Ducati Monster is kind of the one that, define the class.
The Street Fighter.
And then the Street Fighter, the V2, actually, I don't find it that unique. It's a Ducati, and that like gives it that prestige, but like, I don't
Do they
find
still
it
make
unique.
the Diavel?
Yeah, they still do.
What's the difference?
The Diavel is it's an Italian power cruiser. And anymore, that's it. Now, if we're talking,
Is it because the pegs are forward?
so initially when that bike came out, it was Italy's, well, not Italy, but Ducati's attempt at a cruiser. Like they were legitimately trying to make a cruiser. And what they did was they took an 1198 motor, which I'm not super fan of. They're okay. They're a motor, but they don't live up to me to being a 1200cc V-twin. Ducati always makes really weird motors. You have to rev the hell out of them to get any power, and I don't care for that. I want more on tap. Like, I want more immediate torque, and the Ducatis just don't deliver in that regard in comparison to other brands. But they took that 1198 engine. I'm sure they did some chicanery with tuning to make it, more appropriate. And I don't know what chassis they stretched out for it. I would guess a monster chassis on the original Diavel, or a multistrada chassis. I bet it's more multistrada. And then they gave us some goofy rear tire. It's got like a 240 rear tire or something. It's something absurd.
Like a Rocket?
It might not be that big. Yeah, actually, a Rocket's its leading competitor.
Yeah.
I would also put it up against a VMAX. The Yamaha VMAX is another competitor in that like muscle cruiser, power cruiser kind of segment. But the unique thing about the Diavel is it never ceased to be a Ducati. And I mean, it's still a sport bike. They just moved the pegs on it. So like when you ride the thing, it actually handles good. Like you can watch dudes go out to tracks and like actually rip on them out at track, run intermediate pace on them on what's supposed to be a cruiser. And when they put the pegs forward, they didn't move them like lazy boy style forward. They moved them up to like kitchen table chair style forward rather than like bar stool. Like, sport bikes like sitting on a bar stool. The Diavel is more like sitting on a kitchen table chair. And then like a Harley, like your traditional soft tail Harley is more like you're sitting in a lazy boy. And the Diavel is more kitchen table chair. So like in all honesty, the uniqueness of the Diavel, yeah, it's kind of a muscle cruiser or a power cruiser. Oh, and by the way, it's under 500 pounds. So it's like 160 horsepower and under 500 pounds. Like it rips. As far as uniqueness goes, I think it's got that on lock. Like it's its own thing. It's not even, you can't even put it in a class of motorcycle. And especially with this new V4 one that they came out with, it's more sport bike than it has ever been. They even moved the pegs back slightly because they figured out that people weren't buying this to be a cruiser because it's not what it is. So as far as like the Diavel qualifying is cool, it's unique. It's not popular.
No, I've seen 3 or 4 of them ever.
Yeah, here's how I can tell you it's not popular. It doesn't do well on the secondhand market. And in the first-hand market, they didn't do well either. Ducati dealers have kind of had to give them away. Like you will never buy a Diavel for MSRP. It'll always be well under MSRP. Like no one really wants them because if you're going to Ducati, what are you going there to buy?
Panigale V4.
You're going to buy a super bike. That's what they build. That's what they're known for. As far as style goes, I don't know if the Diavel I would consider stylish.
We'll have to look at some pictures.
I don't care for the way it looks. Really, it doesn't really shine. It doesn't scream Ducati when you see it. If you don't know what it is, you definitely would not guess Ducati until you got up close, and then you can kind of see some of the Ducati stuff, just the way they put things together and the way they like to draw the lines and stuff. But it doesn't really look like one, and then you look around it and you're like, this doesn't look like a brother. You can't figure out what the bike is. You just don't really know when you look at it. It just looks like a weird amalgamation of parts.
To me, it always looked like super 2004 dudes that wore like the overly large-legged jeans that were like ripped on the bottom with like embroidered crosses on the back, spiked hair. Like that's what it's from an era that's gone. And
Hold on. We could buy one, a 2021 Diavel 1260 Lamborghini, the green one. 126 miles, $79,000.
I think the MSRP on those was $65,000 if I remember right. And that one being the joint venture with Lamborghini, and it's like an ultra rare collectible one. That one's not really one I could consider.
Number 362 of 630.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were limited production and everything. So that's an outlier. That's not collected because it's a Diavel. It's collected because it's a Lamborghini, but it's a motorcycle. But saying the Diavel's stylish, I think is missing the mark. I don't feel like it's stylish at all. Like I don't think there's no other motorcycles out there trying to be the Diavel. So I don't think that
they saw in the market that they don't sell, and they're like, oh, we don't have to worry about competing with this.
Well, they started
it's not going anywhere.
$23,000 for a 1260S.
Yep. Yeah, they were expensive. They weren't cheap. Like they went all the way up to near 30 with the normal iterations of them. And then they had some fancier ones. Like I think the carbon model went for like 28 or something like that. But I'm telling you, no one paid MSRP for these things. They were giving them away. They're $5, $6, $7 off. Like it was pretty absurd. And they'd sit in a dealership showroom for like 2 years, sometimes 3 years, brand new model sitting on the floor that old. It's like, that's pretty rough.
I'm surprised they still make it at all.
I know. That's what's always weird about it to me is like, why are they are they just trying to recoup cost of tooling and development? Like, I don't
Yes.
know. So that would be my guess is the reason they produce it is just to try to recoup that cost. But like, I wouldn't be surprised to see that model ditched from the lineup just because it's like, to me, it doesn't fit a market need. Like no one out in the market was like, man, I want a cruiser, a big V-twin cruiser, and I really want it to look freaking weird. That would be awesome. Like no, anybody that wants a V-twin cruiser, you know exactly where they're going. Harley has that on lock. Like it is like overwhelmingly so. So I always find it's funny. Hell, Yamaha pretty much quit producing cruisers.
Yep.
completely.
Kawasaki too, for the most part.
Like that's how far away like it is. Like if you're not Harley, that's how hard it is to be in the V twin cruiser category. Is you got people like Yamaha and Kawasaki backing out. Why would Ducati be successful at it? So I would say ultimately the Diavel, while in some regards I respect it, and if one was sitting in front of me, I wouldn't say no to riding it. I don't think it's a cool motorcycle. I really don't.
Now Ducati has a bike that I do think is a cool motorcycle.
What's
that? The one that you used to have.
Hyper?
The Hyper Motard.
That is near and dear to my heart. Are you familiar with the Hyper Motard?
I absolutely.
I had an 821 Hyper Motard. Mine was ESP, so mine had like the fancy suspension and stuff. Mine was a 2014 model year. But style, unique, popular, and functional.
So functional.
It was a very limited scope of function. It was the best motorcycle I've ever ridden in the Appalachian Mountains. Hands down, nothing could touch that bike in the mountains. It was incredible there. And it just fits so well. Like I rode everything, the entire gap. I did it in fifth gear. Like I didn't try to do it in fifth gear. I just did. And it was crazy. The way it pulls out of corners and everything. It's a very mid-range motor. It doesn't like being low. It doesn't like being high. It's like sticking in the mid. And it just loves it there. And that bike would carry enough speed through the gap to stick in fifth gear and stay in the mid-range. It was incredible. That thing didn't even have a quick shifter. Didn't care. Didn't need one. It was just perfect the way it was. It was such an awesome motorcycle. And it was really comfortable to ride all day long. But when I say it's not so functional, once I got it outside of the mountains, when I got here to Kentucky, it ran out of legs out in Kentucky because Kentucky has higher speed roads and corners. I couldn't take it to the racetrack and do track days respectably on it. I mean, you can do track days on anything, but I couldn't do track days respectably on it, not to ride at the level I want to ride at. It would be fun and a novel to take out on a track day, but I wouldn't want to like spend all that money for a track day to go out there and be dedicated to 3 days of that bike. Like, no thanks. So as far as functionality goes, I'd kind of write that off on it. It's a one-trick pony. Popular? Not really.
I think it's popular without people knowing it's popular though, because whenever you see one, you're like, oh, it's that, and they might not be able to know what it is. Plus, that bike is like the villain motorcycle in movies.
I think style and uniqueness it falls under, but popular, no. Like it has style. Supermotos are very posh, I think, and as a bike that it isn't a real supermoto, but that's like its design intent is to be, it plays one on TV kind of thing. Like it's not a real supermoto, but it's, styled after one and looks like one. It does supermoto things, but it's a 450-pound motorcycle. So it's never going to be a true supermoto, but like the geometry on it, how many bikes do you know of that only have 100 horsepower that are fourth gear wheelie, like power wheelie? And it's because the geometry set it up to like weight bias it that way to where it just wheelied super easy, but it didn't overly wheelie. Like, I don't know, like they did a really, really good job at making the bike extremely playful for weighing as much as it did. So as far as style and uniqueness goes, I think it's got that on lock, but popularity and functionality, I think ultimately it suffers in those two categories. So cool, it's like half cool. And there's a reason I don't own one anymore. Mine had 12,000 miles on it. It was getting ready to come up on Desmo service, and that's when you get rid of Ducatis. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking in a different realm. Cool. Vespa.
Vespa. Yeah, you're not like.
It transitions outside of the motorcycle world.
I think so. When you start talking about Vespa, you're talking about exactly that. Like, it moves beyond the motorcycle space to where it's internationally recognized as a thing by normal people who have nothing to do with motorcycling. And for it to be able to successfully do that, it has to be something special. And I would say, like, you know, I know, like, being facetious and like introducing a scooter into a conversation of cool, you know, you're try to get a reaction or whatever, but legitimately a Vespa is cool in every way.
Absolutely. No question.
Every way. Like,
To normal people.
like, style, it is very cool. It is iconic. It is to this, like, would they come out with that body style on the Vespas like back in the 50s or 60s, and they're still made to look like that today? That's how you know it's just a timeless and extremely stylish design.
Because in a Piaggio lineup, they have Beverly, they have other scooters that you could argue are more capable and better as a scooter, but it's not the Vespa.
And, you know, I would hands down, like, if I was truly in the market for a new scooter and I had, you know,
Buku cash,
$6,000, $8,000 to spend on a scooter. And in all seriousness, the BMW is way better. The X-Max from Yamaha, way better in every way. Suzuki still lists a Bergman 400 on the list, but I thought they were going to discontinue it, but it's still on their website. And that, I'm sure, is still way better, even though it's the biggest bootied scooter I've ever seen in my life. But none of those scooters are stylish. None of those scooters are unique. They're popular and they're functional, but they're not stylish and unique.
They're popular as tools, though.
Yeah, they're appliances.
Yeah, it's an appliance. And just because somebody has, you know, everybody's got a fridge, it doesn't make your fridge cool.
Exactly. Well, actually,
other than inside.
Yeah, I was going to say, fridges are cool
The
by
inside's
design. Cool. But absolutely, Vespa style, Vespa unique, 100%. Like, and as far as popularity goes, very much so, extremely popular. And then it's still a scooter, so it still functions as a scooter, and it works. If you look at how a scooter works on a daily life, since you bought your scooter, seriously, how functional is that thing? It's like a pickup truck
to the grocery store,
but it's a motorcycle. It's crazy. Like, you can carry all kinds of stuff on it, and it's comfortable, and you can operate it with one hand. And, like, I mean, there's all kinds of cool things about a scooter. And yours goes like 90 miles an hour, so it's not slow.
Vroom vroom.
Do the sound effect.
Which one?
The Nick effect.
Just for evidence here.
There we go. That's the one I wanted.
But there's more.
That's, of course, the one. That's always the one we want.
So, and I don't know the different scooter or the different Vespa models. So I know they make a small one.
Well, they have like a
tiny one, like a 50.
A Liberty.
And then they have
a Primavera.
A 150. And then they have like a 300.
Well, no, but there's overlap between. Like, you can get, I think there's one that I feel like is called a Liberty. But that might not be the same style we're thinking about.
Yeah, and
technically it's a Piaggio Vespa.
Yeah, Piaggio is the brand that owns it, but Piaggio owns multiple lines.
Yes.
And hell, Piaggio owns Aprilia. So I mean, like, they're just the parent company to all of it. But the Vespa line,
goes up to I think 300, but their 300 is only like 289.
They definitely have a model range. I just don't know how many miles are in the range, and I don't know the different model names because honestly, I've never just researched Vespa. I've always thought they were overpriced.
Oh, they're so expensive. Like, if you want a 300cc Vespa, I think they're almost 10 grand.
I was gonna say they're getting close to 10. I think it's like it's absurd, and
yes,
they're one that's like a 150. It's like $6,000, and I'm like, nah, I can go get a way better bike for that.
Well, I think it's considered as like it's like the BMW of scooters.
I wouldn't say it was like the BMW, because BMW for cars, I'm talking cars here. BMW's like they're not pretty. They're not. I'm not calling them bad looking, But I'm just saying they're not beautiful cars.
Yeah, but it's like the quality versus the utility, and they've been around forever.
Like,
Vespa has. It's
I
just
would
like
say
they're kind of held to a higher
in
it's on a higher
motorcycling,
level.
if we were to compare them to a car brand, I would say in motorcycle they're like the motorcycle equivalent of an Alfa Romeo. Beautiful,
Yeah.
strange, like maybe some things about the design aren't quite right. Like just little things like that, but ultimately, if you see a silhouette of one, you know exactly what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
It's unmistakable.
I would own an Alfa Romeo Giulia if it had a manual transmission like it does in Europe.
I love most Alphas. I think they're very good looking cars.
No, I don't like the SUVs. They're too kind of...
Oh, I'm not thinking of new Alphas. I'm thinking of like
old ones are great.
80s,
Yeah.
70s, like that era Alpha. They were beautiful cars. They're
You'd
awesome.
like the 4C.
I love the 4C.
I
That
really
thing's
like,
cool.
That's
as
the
hell.
one I would own.
Yeah, what's weird about the 4C is how narrow the tires are in comparison to how wide the car is. It looks funny. It looks like it's on pizza cutters. Like it's crazy how skinny the tires are.
Well, it only has a 1750cc engine.
I know it's a small
Tiny,
engine.
but it makes a shit ton of power.
I would, if I was in,
It doesn't have power steering either.
if I was in, if I was looking for a car like that, a small roadster style car, I like the Alpha. It's a very beautiful car. It's neat and it's cool, but I would just go Lotus. That's what I would do.
But 100%
I feel like you're getting
no
a better car.
Miatas.
No, I don't want a Miata.
Too mainstream.
I'd have a Miata.
It would be perfect size for you.
If I went for a Miata, have you ever seen how much the new Miatas are?
They're a lot.
They're like 37 grand.
So what's silly about that, when the new one came out, the Spider from Fiat
Yeah.
is the same car.
Yeah.
Except it actually looks better. And it's
I
a
wouldn't go that
convertible.
far.
And it was only like $1,000 or $2,000 better. Or more expensive. So it's like, why would you just buy the Spider one? Because it looks like a normal car. The redesign on the Miata was different.
I like when they did the hard top Miata. I thought it looked sharp, but I do feel like mid 30s for that car is absurd. Like to me, in my mind,
There's so little material.
like I feel like a Miata should always be a sub $20,000 car. As brand new. And then
Have you seen how much a Civic? A Civic is 25 grand now.
Yeah, but why can they make a Civic for 25 grand, but they can't make a Miata for 25 grand? Like, it's less material, less vehicle. Like, I don't understand why it's, and maybe you get into like, oh, it's lower production numbers, so there's higher cost involved per unit. I don't care. It's still a Miata to me, and Miata's been made for like 30 years.
MSRP is $29,000.
That's for the base, you
Yep.
know. Most
Yeah,
of the time,
for the
you're going to
base.
spend more than the base.
Tarted up.
So it's going to end up in the mid 30s.
The GT, which is the one you want, is $34,285.
Yep.
What does that extra $4,000 get you, Travis?
Is that the hard top? Is that what it gets
Some
you?
badges on the back, probably.
4-speaker Pioneer sound system with 150 watt amplifier.
What did Ford used to call it? What did they call theirs? The Monsoon?
Monsoon system.
Yeah, Monsoon
The
system.
Monsoon
audio
system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was only good during one season.
Get out of here. Play another Nick sound effect.
You need to make it easier to
should just leave
access
it.
than this.
Yeah. Well, I should put them all on one page.
I missed it. Oh,
It was a little
yeah,
quieter.
that one you need to
that one's quiet.
up the.
I got to turn that one up.
Oh, better.
But like, I mean, since they've been made for 30 years, if you want a Miata, you can go get one for $5,000. It's in good shape. So why spend 30 some grand when you just go get an older one for $5,000? So I can see people who like do that for doing autocross and everything.
Next cool motorcycle.
Next, we got
So we've discussed Triumph, which is 75%. We've
Yeah.
discussed Diavel, Vespa.
We had the Hypermotard.
Yeah, the
Hypermotard.
Hypermotard was in there too.
so 2 Ducatis so far.
So
Well, it's because they make interesting things, because I don't think they sell too much volume of any one particular thing.
And this is personal here, but I've always thought the Buell, pretty much any of the XB Buells, I'll let Ulysses stay in there. The XB Buells, like the Lightning I had, are cool. Like just flat out cool.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I feel like they have style. I feel like they're very unique. Popularity, here's my argument for popularity.
well, they're dead now, so there's not really popularity anymore. But when they were around in the early 2000s, they were more popular.
The reason I have an argument for popularity is I could go to a straight Pirate Fest, Quaker Steak, bike night, and all of those dudes who wouldn't have an idea of what I was rolling up on if I came up on a Triumph Street Triple or a Kawa Beamer, they'd have no idea what they were looking at other than it's a crotch rocket. They all knew what my Buell was. That's my argument for popularity. All the Harley guys know what the hell it is. And they're like, oh, that's a Buell. They all thought it was fast, which is laughable. Because, I mean, I guess compared to their bikes, it's fast.
Yeah, relative to what they're used to, yeah,
but
it is fast.
No, it was not fast. But
No.
as far as functional, that's when we start getting into some here's where we're going to have to bullshit a little bit to make it happen.
It's no way functional.
It functions.
Well, it gets you to a place,
It does. It moves you. Yes.
but not much else.
What I always appreciated about riding the XB Buells is how unique they are to ride. They don't. You rode it. It doesn't ride like much else. It strangely has like an old school handling characteristic where you have to use like a lot of body English and a lot of input on the bars.
It's real lazy.
Even though it's got a short wheelbase and a sharp steering head angle, like it should be like super agile, almost to the point of twitchy, but it's like hard to get it to tip in. But then on the other side of that, if it's hard to get it to tip in, it should be super stable at speed, and it's not. It head shakes like crazy if you hit a bump, and like it's just like it's the most. How did they even engineer that into it? I have no idea. But
Marca.
And you always hear things like Eric Buell was such an amazing engineer and he knew how to build all these motorcycles. I really don't think he did. Like, I don't think anything about that bike was better than anything else on any other motorcycle. In fact, most of it was worse. But the unique things he did, like the oil in the swing arm, fuel in the frame, upside down brake, things like that were pretty cool. And just when you look the bike over, everything was like different to be different. And the engineering problems he solved to make that all functional and make it work were really, I think they were cool. So when I rolled up to bike night, it was a bike that always drew a crowd because of how everybody was familiar with Buell, but hardly anybody had seen him in person. And they'd all want to like come up to it and they'd say like, oh, check the breakout, or hey, check the belt tensioner for the belt drive. Check that thing out. That thing's weird and cool, So, and I'd always make the joke like, it's real easy to change my oil. I just drained my swing arm, and just stuff like that. That was, I don't know, it was cool. So I feel like it was a cool bike.
I think you could call it cool. Because when you look at that bike and you're walking around it and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's the word you use about 1,000 times when you look at that thing.
And it's so
Where's the gas
different.
go? Oh,
Yeah.
not in the tank. That's the air box.
And you can
Cool.
see through
That's
the tank,
cool.
and you can see the air filter and stuff. And you're like, that's kind of cool. Like, you can actually see through that.
Yep.
So it's, I don't know, it's just cool.
Yeah,
All
I think that one classifies as cool, even though the functionality part is a little scuffed.
It's
a little scuffed.
It is functional. It does
And I will say,
function as a machine.
in the era that it was built in, you have to kind of look at it with
that lens,
with
for
that
sure.
lens of saying, okay, well, when this was built and what it was built for, how did it function? Because today you'd ride that bike and you laugh at it, and it's like a reminder of where we came from, because you get on it and you ride it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. No slipper clutch.
Oh yeah, that's
You get
the
a
first
rude
time I rode
awakening.
it. I was like, whoa!
That is a rude awakening.
Forgot what it was like to ride a bike without a slipper in it. Because I mean, hell, like the Indians I sell at work have slippers in them, and I'm glad they do. I think everything needs an assist slipper clutch. I'm curious how many Harleys have them now, because I think they all should have them. They should all have an assist slipper clutch. It reduces clutch pull, so your hand doesn't get worn out. It makes it to where like it's back torque limiting, so you can downshift aggressively, and it's not going to bark the rear tire.
Yep. It's just there's like
Functionally,
no downsides to having that in a bike.
Oh, anymore, it's like, yeah, I think every bike should have an assist slipper clutch in them. So, but riding one that doesn't have one because it's an older bike or whatever, you figure out, and Nick, you've probably never really ridden much.
It's the only one.
Yeah, that didn't have a slipper in it. So it's like when you let go of that clutch, if you're downshifting aggressively, you'll know if you didn't match the engine speed to the road speed. It will let you know.
I don't downshift aggressively, so I don't think I have really noticed much of a difference.
Well, and the way that when you rode it, we were on
There was traffic the whole fucking day.
and it was a curvy road and stuff where you're typically only in one gear. You know, you were probably just chilling in fourth gear, fifth gear.
And we were stuck behind cars the whole day.
So it was like, yeah, you
And it
probably
was
weren't
like
doing much
92
shifting.
degrees.
It was very hot, and
That's
bike,
a hot bike too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that bike was pretty hot to ride. So in that
And loud.
respect,
God,
it was
it's
not
so loud.
So
Oh
loud.
my God.
It was so loud. Did you wear earplugs when you rode
Well, I
it?
always do.
Oh, you always wear earplugs.
You have to. You
Yeah.
have to have you're wore out after having earplugs in all day, and you're just
Oh, yeah.
like, God, there's no way anybody could ride this thing for any period of time without earplugs. It's just you'll go deaf in one side.
Well, and that was particular to that one because it had that drummer exhaust on there and stuff. So that's
Which
why.
they pretty much all do.
Well,
who didn't put that exhaust or a loud exhaust on that bike?
I love the XB bikes when they have factory exhausts on them. The factory exhaust sounds so good on them. And I don't know why anybody changes them out for anything else.
Because they want it louder.
Because they're
It's a
Harley
V-twin.
guys, I know. But, man, I'm telling you, that factory Buell exhaust on an XB bike sounds incredible. It's like the perfect tone, the perfect volume level. Like, it's how one should sound. So changing out the exhaust, that's why I never changed the one on the original Buell I had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have another interesting thought.
Yeah.
So we've named, 5 different bikes.
Yeah.
We haven't named anything from the land of Japan.
Japan?
SV650. There you go.
I was waiting for that one. And
You gotta save the best for last.
what's your argument against it being cool?
I don't know. It's,
Dorky.
yeah.
It's really dorky.
Not the S model. The S model, you won't even hardly be able to tell the difference between a sport
100%.
bike.
That's the dorkiest of them. If you roll up on it, better be an N. It better not be that S model.
No, with
What's the
full
difference?
Huh? The S model has a bikini fairing. The N model's completely naked.
Well, you gotta have the extra pieces on the bottom.
That round headlight,
the
though.
bikini one looks dumb. I will agree with that. But if you
It
get the
looks
bottom
so
pieces,
half
like
done
John's, you remember
because
John's?
it doesn't have any side fairings to
Yeah, and
it.
it was extremely popular for SV650Ss to add side fairings to them. I think
John's
they were-
had it.
Well, I think they were a Suzuki accessory.
Yeah, it was.
So like you can add full fairing to them.
It looks better without. I will not say that about very many things, but this.
100%. Like the N model with the round headlight, like that's the one.
If I had to pick an N model, I want the
03 to 09.
no, I want it's more modern. The that has the
SFE?
bucket around it. The cafe version.
Oh,
That's it.
yeah, that's
Cafe
real modern.
racing.
Yeah.
That's an SV650, but it's the SV650X. I think it's what it's called, SV650X.
I don't know, but I know it's the cafe one. It's got an embroidered brown seat.
That one is
and
sharp. I just hate the clip-ons on it.
Clip-ons are the
They
best.
might not be that bad,
That's incorrect, sir.
but it's got the front little miniature windshield that goes around the round headlight.
I would just put a flat bar on it, and I'd be happy.
Yeah, that'd be fine if you had to do that. If it just was not tolerable with the clip-ons, I don't think they were really low clip-ons. They were.
They
Pretty,
weren't. They were like the ones that are raised up above the triple.
Yeah.
But it's lower than a flat
Fake.
bar. So yeah, it's like fake clip-ons.
I will disagree with fake clip-ons.
So SV650s are like style-wise and style alone, they're dorky. But I don't think it's dorky in a bad way.
Yeah.
03 to
I don't
09,
really even see
like
it as dorky. But
03 to 09 is the most popular and highest regarded SV650. And try to tell me the taillights aren't cool. I can promise you, like, it has one of the coolest sets of taillights. It's so simple, but it's so good looking. But here's the thing about an SV650. If you're chilling at Willow,
oh my God. I
I
already know what you're going to say.
and you hear a bike off in the distance coming your
Yep.
way, and it sounds like it sounds, but then it pops over the hill and it's an SV650. At that moment, you're slightly disappointed it's not something exotic because it sounds exotic. But then you're over your disappointment because you're like, well, it is still an SV650. And that right there lets me know that it's still a cool bike.
Yep.
Because at first you're a little disappointed you're not seeing something exotic
Not a
come hop
Ninja
over the hill.
650.
But like, speaking of Ninja 650, not cool.
No.
100%. Like, that is a horrible motorcycle.
All of the twin Ninjas.
The 650 twin bikes.
No, all of the twin Ninjas, any flavor and size.
Oh, yeah. Well,
'Cause they're just trying to make something that like looks like a sport bike, but it's not really a sport bike.
the only argument I
It's a
get against
poser
that,
bike.
Yeah.
the only argument I got against that is a Ninja 300, Ninja 400, more than Ninja 400 is an excellent track day race platform.
Yes.
And in that regard, it holds some coolness because of that. And it's a very good motorcycle for what it's intended for. You know, beginner rider, all that kind of stuff. It's a very, very good motorcycle. So
But not cool.
I wouldn't say it's uncool though.
No, it's just average.
It's just, yeah, it's average. And it can be made cool, but it's overall, it's pretty average. I think what makes it cool is,
I think the Z is a better fit for that. I would almost be fine with the Ninja side of those bikes going away and it just being the Z platform. Because it's better at what it's designed for.
Z900
anyways.
RS.
so
I
uncool.
don't like that bike. I do not like that thing
Uncool.
at
Like,
all.
I want to like that bike, but I can't.
It just feels wrong.
It's just like, no, like it's not cool. It's trying too hard to be something it isn't.
Well, here's my problem with that bike. So I owned a regular Z900 when they first came out in 18. And the next year, I believe it was, they came out with the RS. Well, my Z had regular pedal rotors and it had axial brake pads, brake calipers on it. And they were okay, but they're not great by any means.
No.
The RS, which is supposed to just be a rendition of the classic bike, so you would think, oh, they wouldn't go out of their way to do anything crazy. They just kind of restyled it and made it look like the classic. No, they put monoblock brakes on it.
Yeah, they gave.
Like, what the heck? And then they didn't update the Z900 for the, like, I think they still don't have it.
No, I think
I might
current,
be wrong.
no,
Maybe the new one does.
The current Z900 has radial mounts. It doesn't have axial mount calipers. But like when they came out with the retro version, the RS, and they had a bunch of performance upgrades, and they didn't share the same performance upgrades on the non-RS, just the regular Z900.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
I was like,
why did you do it dirty like that? Like the Z900 is really the better bike that should have all of those upgrades.
Yeah, it's the more performance oriented and more performance stylized bike. So why in the hell did they put all that performance stuff on the RS and then leave the non-RS with like
High and dry? There's nothing.
Yeah,
There
two
was
Different
nothing
owner
available
groups
for that bike.
too. The RS owners probably don't give a shit about any of those things.
exactly like that's why I didn't
I don't
understand
know
why they put
anybody
them
that's
on.
even bought one of those bikes. I've never seen one in the wild.
I've never
I have.
seen you've seen one in the wild.
When I did one of those, the total control class, there was this one guy with a Z900 RS. And I was like, I didn't know that bike existed until I saw it. And then I was confused by why it was called a Z900 because I was thinking,
You're thinking Z bikes. You're thinking like the modern naked
and then I
Kawasaki.
saw RS and I'm like, retro styling.
So What's funny about that is the MT-09 version of the Z900RS is the XSR 900.
Those are cool.
Those are cool.
Oh,
and
yeah.
those are a popular bike. They are a very stylish bike. You see the one that had the bikini fairing over there that they got in Europe? That one is straight sexy. Like if you can pull a picture up on your phone, like that is a very good looking motorcycle. Had the big boxy tail like the old 90s GP bikes.
Mm-hmm.
That bike looked amazing. And we don't get it in the US, unfortunately.
Well, you know what that reminds me of that I think is also cool?
What's that?
The Husqvarna 701 Svart.
No, not cool.
It's got that same type of styling, in my opinion, though.
It's got Husqvarna styling, which I always try to describe to folks that I'm trying to sell Huskies to. I was like, imagine the IKEA of motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, instantly, like they grasp the design concept as far as like the styling of the bike. They're like, that makes perfect sense.
What's that Nordic like
it's
viewpoint
Swedish
on
and
how
weird.
to do it?
Yeah, and it's like
Saab 900.
like you want to say like this thing's functional, but it actually doesn't function well. Like nothing on a Husqvarna, it's not ergonomic. Like they put on a Svartpillen, they put a rack over the fuel cap that if you get into a front end collision will decapitate your nutsack. It's like, why in the world would you? Who puts a rack on a fuel tank? Like that is just the dumbest idea I've ever. I don't know why they did it. The seats are like
But I
very
don't wanna have
stylish,
children.
but very uncomfortable.
They're real stiff, aren't they?
Yeah,
The foam underneath is really
they're real
like
weird shaped and stuff. And I don't know, like, and the way that the top of the tank flares out sideways, and your knees are supposed to go underneath that. Well, if you're not 5'2",
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
yeah. If you're like 5'8" and above, your knees hit those things, and it's like it's just everything about it's just weird. The 701 version of it was built on the old 690 platform, and they had like the very vibey engine in it, and it had offset size wheels. It was like a 19 front and a 17 rear, or maybe an 18 rear. It was very weird, and it didn't function well. The style was strange. I mean, I guess you could say it's unique.
Saab
but
900.
unique doesn't mean good. And it popular? Hell no. There's a reason they discontinued the model. It wasn't popular. So I would say that model, uncool.
So we touched on Japan. We said XSR 900 is a good representation.
Yeah, of that, I brought that bike up as like for its retro styling
type
purposes, like whatever they're
modern retro.
Modern retro. That's what they're starting to call them now. As far as its modern retro standpoint, it is one of the cool ones. Hell, Ducati pulls off some modern retros that are pretty cool too. But yeah, like the Z900RS, like we talked about, not cool.
You want another argumentative cool bike?
What's that?
Kawasaki H2.
Ooh, no. What? Did you see the Daily Rider?
That's
was
why
that?
I bring it up.
The
Because I just watched it.
the ZH2. I am so glad.
Don't you have to like give those away?
The ZH2s?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They give those away, and the regular H2 they don't really give away.
No.
But that's a lot lower volume, and then the H2R is like no, like they don't really sell H2Rs, and I appreciate the H2R. That's the thing is I actually appreciate the H2R. It's a hyper bike. It's meant to do the one thing it does, and it's
cool.
It's absurd to be absurd.
Yep.
I appreciate that, and it's cool. The regular H2, not cool. The ZH2, I'm so glad I watched the Zach Kortz review of it. Not cool. The H2SX.
That's the
Sport Tour.
Sport Tour one.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it as a Sport Tour. It's functional as a Sport Tour.
I mean, so is that the same? I rode a 1000 SX. Is that the same
No,
feel?
a 1000 SX is going to be like a Ninja 1000. And I don't mean a ZX10. I mean a Ninja 1000.
Correct. Yeah, but is that going to be
Sport
like
Tour version.
what did you say it was? A
H2SX.
H2SX?
And same concept. Take a sport bike, make it fatter, and put bags on it. And then more plush suspension and blah, blah, blah. Same concept, but I would say the 1000 SXU Road leaned more on the sport side of Sport Tour, where the H2SX compared to the 1000 SX leans more towards the tour side of Sport Tour. It's more of a pig than that bike is. It has more power, sure, but like it's just kind of a bloated motorcycle, and they're heavy.
I feel like the supercharger being on that kind of doesn't really align with what the purpose of the bike is. The touring version, the touring model of it.
I don't,
because it's doing kind of the opposite of everything you'd really want to have. Makes it more complicated. Makes the power delivery and all that, just as Zach described in the Daily Rider, makes it slightly more unpredictable and slightly more unwieldy in the hands of somebody that's not experienced.
That would be the only argument I would have. I would agree with you there. If the fueling and the power delivery were more typical, if it did more like what you think, like you ride an FJR 1300 or any of the big bore sport tours, like old school big bore sport tours, and the reason you got that big giant engine in there was because it was under stressed and you didn't have to make it scream to do work. So that's why you would buy a big bore. Where the supercharger does is it makes that 1000cc seem more like a 13 or 1400cc, which he touched on. Mm-hmm. But I can see where it makes the delivery of that power strange and unnatural feeling. Like he kept describing it as unnatural. So I would guess you're probably correct in that regard. But I do think like I would appreciate riding that bike still. It just I couldn't ride it in more technical kind of roads. Like taking it to the Smokies it'd be kind of a bear to deal with.
Yeah, and like he said, it's not for that. That bike doesn't really work on tight technical roads, which is mostly what we do down there. Now, if you stay on like the 4-lane or
big sweepers,
or something else,
big gnarly sweepers and stuff like that, I bet that bike's a blast for like 100 mile an hour.
Yeah, getting on the power on a big huge sweeper and just pushing it into the corner.
And like that would be all right, but like that's kind of novel in my mind.
How many places can you go and do that?
Yeah, it is kind of novel. But I still say
I think it's a poster bike though. Like it's a bike that you'd have a poster of on your wall.
The H2R
the H2R, yeah.
100% the H2R.
Not an H2SX.
It's a Lamborghini Countach.
Yeah.
It's highly impractical.
Yeah, a Countach is
freaking cool.
It's a terrible car.
It's a terrible car, but it's still one of the coolest cars ever made.
Anything other than a poster car.
Exactly. Like the sole reason it's iconic, right, is because it's a poster car. Like it's a bedroom wall poster car. But I think it's what the H2R is, which makes it cool. But an H2, the street version, garbage. I would say less garbage than the ZH2. I feel like the ZH2 is more garbage than the H2.
Garbage.
Because the H2 still serves the function of a hypersport. It's still a Hayabusa. It's still a ZX14. It's still that bike. And nobody's sitting here whining about a Hayabusa not going around corners. We all know they can't go around corners. So I'm not surprised. I think people
complain about that because they don't understand that that's the competition for that bike. Is that bike is aimed at the Hayabusa. It's aimed at something that doesn't really do that anymore. Because you look at it and it looks like a sport bike, and if you're not standing next to it, you don't realize how big that thing is. Like it's a big
monster.
Motorcycle.
I always thought it was funny because like what you're saying about it is true. Like you're not comparing it to the correct motorcycles. If you compare it to what it's supposed to be compared to, like Hayabusa and things like that, it makes sense still. And it's like, okay, I mean, I'm still calling it uncool, but
that would be a great
makes sense.
That would be a great drag bike.
Exactly.
Yes.
Make a great drag bike and all that kind of stuff. And I'm totally cool people drag racing that kind of stuff. Like, I don't hate on them for that. Like, that's what they're designed for. It's what their purpose is. So they're using them.
Well, that's a bike that we don't care about, that we would never own. So it doesn't hurt our feelings
But
any.
like,
It's not taking any bikes from our pool.
if you tried to tell me that, okay, an H2, you know, off the showroom floor, an H2 is the fastest bike ever, I'm like, you guys do know the Panigale exists. It's a motorcycle that's out there that you can purchase for approximately the same amount of money.
Yep.
And I would put dollars down that would say a Panigale would out accelerate one of those things. I would. Absolutely.
That would be an interesting thing to see. I don't know. It
But
would
you
be hard
could
to say.
save $10,000 and get a Beamer.
Yeah, or I would even put up, like, hell, the new Beamer's numbers are like 217 horsepower. The H2's
50?
225,
And
230.
is it the R that's 300?
It's the R that's 300. And that's the one that's not road legal. And I know, like, you start talking modified motorcycles, and we can't argue that, but like, because then it's just whoever modified it the most. But as far as stock motorcycles go, the H2 is like 550 pounds. The new Panigale S is like 420. The Panigale S makes some absurd amount of horsepower, 215, somewhere between 215 and 220. No, I take that back. It makes 208 is what it makes. It makes 208 unless you do the race exhaust on it. If you do the race exhaust, it's like 225 or something like that. Where the H2 makes about 225, but it weighs 130 pounds more.
It's over 500 pounds.
It's like 550. It's very hefty bike.
The ZH2R makes 310 horsepower, 326 with Ram Air. So I guess there's a Ram R
It's
feature.
insane.
That's for the R.
Yeah, the R.
How about
Yep.
the non-R? Because the R I respect. Like, I think it's cool that it's an over 300 horsepower motorcycle. Like, that's just neat. Like, how many other production bikes are out
Because
there that are
people
like
think
that?
210.
Over 200
210.
horsepower is nice.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, a Panigale S, and we're not even talking fancy Panigales. They get fancier from there. But a Panigale S,
The H2 Carbon ABS, so not the R, but the Carbon H2, is 239.
239. Okay. So that is one that's like, okay, that would probably beat a Panigale S, but like, again, Panigale S isn't the fancy version of the Panigale. Like,
Panigale can go around corners.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then-
which this won't really be able to. And this does have a boatload more torque.
it does
down low.
It does for sure.
So that's kind of the one argument of, well, maybe, I guess it really depends on how long you plan on racing for.
I would say a quarter-mile run.
Quarter mile,
I'd be real curious.
it might be close because I think the H2 is going to have, if it can keep it all down on the ground, that's the other problem.
I think it does a very good job of that because long wheelbase have a lot of weight. Like, I don't think they're overwhelmed with wheelies. I think it's the Panigale that'll be more overwhelmed with wheelies. And
Well, that's where, how well did they dial in all their traction control and their wheelie control and all that stuff to keep the power down?
Panigale's got one of the best traction control systems on the planet right now. So yeah, I think H2R, cool. H2, not cool. ZH2, even less cool. H2SX, I'm back in the game. I wouldn't go
What
as
about
far
the
as
ZH2
cool,
SCABS?
but that's a lot of letters.
Carbon.
No ZH2 is cool. SE or not, it's just not cool. And for 20 grand, look at what you can buy. Aprilia Tuono, Super Duke. Like, if you're wanting like absurd power, it's out there. Like, you don't have to, whatever. Supercharger's not necessary on that bike. And it's a pig. So
I think Kawasaki needs to slim down their sport bike-esque looking line.
Yes.
They have way too many that, unless you know what each bike is and what it's for, like if you just go to a dealership and look around,
They all look the same.
they all look kind of the same. And it's like, oh, well, they're like, why do they have like 7 different sport bike types?
Like, why are these 7 anniversary scheme bikes?
There's a ZX10,
There's a little bit of nuance
ZX14.
between
there's-
the two, but
yeah,
like,
and then there's like an Arctic edition. It's like,
you look at all of it and you're like, this is
why?
essentially looks the same, but it's totally different.
Yeah. Like, explain the difference between a ZX10 and a ZX14. It's like, I don't know. I guess the engine size, but why?
But then
Why does it need to exist?
if you look at it,
And then there's a Z1000.
Yeah, you could look at like a Ninja 500 and a ZX10. Yeah, one looks way bigger, but when it's painted the exact same, what really is the difference?
So I really like the anniversary color scheme, that 90s throwback.
Oh, I do too.
I think
It's
that
great.
looks really good.
I think
It's
it's
amazing.
gorgeous. I think it's
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm appreciative that they threw it across the line like they did. But I get where you're coming from, because coming from a dealership perspective, I hate Royal Enfield. And the fact that the reason I hate them is they make so many models in so many colors that I have to stock. And if it was same thing with Kawasaki, you make like 30 different models, and now I got to stock all that and dedicate floor space to it. Like, it's horrendous as a dealer. And we've absolutely refused on Royal Enfield. Like, we told the Royal Enfield rep, Travis, I don't know if you ever met him.
I don't think so.
He goes to comment and stuff. You know, we kind of told him, like, no, we're not ordering anymore. We're not ordering a single more until these sell, because it's so hard, right? They have like 7 colors for each individual model, and they come out with a new model called the Bear. It's an Interceptor 650 with a different paint scheme.
And they call it a different thing now.
And it's got different wheels. Who gives a shit? But there's another model with 7 more colors that I got to stock. And then they're getting ready to come out with the Gorilla, which is a naked Himalayan.
I thought the Himalayan was already naked.
They have the Himalayan, the new 450 Himalayan, and they're creating a new naked Himalayan called the Gorilla 450. And I'll admit, the Gorilla 450 is actually a cool bike, but there's another model with 7 more colors that I got to stock, and it's built on like the same 3 bikes. They only truly build like 3 bikes, but they turn them into like 15 different models, and each model has 7 different colors. How would I stock all that? I think that's fucking stupid.
For a $3,000 bike.
Yeah, for like, it's ridiculous, and we don't sell enough of them. The customer clientele base has died off since COVID was over, because all the hipsters apparently went back to work or something. I don't know, but
I know somebody with a Himalayan 350 in their garage. Probably doesn't have over 1,000 miles.
That's a more common case than you'd think.
Oh, I know.
Unfortunately,
That's where most of them live.
that's where
So when
most
are
of
they
them
going to
go to
flood the
die.
market?
That's what's happening right now.
People have finally decided to let go of it, and they're getting back into the old ways, the pre-COVID ways,
of going to football games
and of
going
realizing
to
that,
bars and
I
stuff.
bought this thing and I rode it a little bit and I didn't really use it like I thought I was going to, and it was just a big dream in their head.
And that's what adventure bikes are going to be.
The side-by-side market is
Oh, absolutely. Side by
horrible
side
for
market
that.
it's crushed.
So what's stupid is it's crushed with it's flooded, absolutely flooded with units. Nobody is willing to move on the price.
I know that we're in this weird Mexican standoff. You want to know why they're not moving on price?
Because they're upside down on them. Because they're
'Cause
$30,000 units that they bought.
Because they're upside down on their
Mm-hmm.
loans. That's why they're not moving on price. And that's what's hilarious about it. So what we're going to see, what
Huge bank takeovers.
that's what you're going to see. You're going to see like
Huge auctions.
massive repo. Because I can tell you from the dealer side of things, we're already seeing it. I get a monthly report from the MPA. It's the National Power Sports Auction. And on my monthly report, we're like 35 pages of Harleys that went at auction that month. 35 pages. There's not one Harley per page. There's
Yeah.
like
10 or 15
no. There's like 150
per page.
to 200 per page, and I have 30 to 35 pages of it, and that's just what went at the NPA on Mulhauser Road.
Jeez,
I think there's
that's
like
crazy.
6 NPA auction locations across the nation. I think there's 6 of them or something. So each one of those has their own 30-page list of Harleys. Like, it's so crazy. We're going to see that with the side-by-sides. And if we aren't already, I don't think I get reports of side-by-sides.
It'd probably be a book if you did.
Like, but we know because CCM
They have it. I'm sure they get it.
and they're talking about how brutal the side-by-side market is right now. He's got so much inventory in side-by-side that new building they built, completely full.
Oh, I know.
Stacked to the ceiling with side by sides. They're stacked like 4 and 5 high.
Yep.
And the whole entire building's full of them. And he started having to stack them outside. They're storing them outside
tarped
now.
outside probably.
That's how bad it is.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, it was a up and coming product that like was at its prime in terms of like affordability versus utility and capability and places to go to do it. And it was like one of like 5 activities you were allowed to do. And so they just sold all of them. And so all the manufacturers were like, oh, the market's taking off. We got to build. And so they build, and then they just kept shipping. And then the sales started to die off. And then they finally caught up to all these orders and all this stuff. And so the market's flooded with new units. It's flooded with used units, and nobody wants them.
Yep. And to a lesser extent, the motorcycle market's kind of similar. It's just a far, far lesser extent. That it's not as bad. The side-by-side market's horrible right now. RV market's horrible right now.
For the same exact reason.
What's
Those
funny
went
is
hand in hand.
It's funny is watching the car market go through it.
Well, have you seen Polaris's last quarter financial results?
No.
Year over year change in
How many percent
earnings
down?
per share, it's 81% down.
But I mean, so the KTM group, Perrier Mobility, they're like massively down. And I remember the internet, like literally a month or two ago, the internet was like just ragging on KTM, like, oh, KTM's going to go out of business. And
So sales were down 23%, and then their earnings per share was down 81%.
so like the internet kept spouting on about it, about KTM being like, oh, they're so far down and blah, blah, blah. KTM's going to go out of business. And I was like, these people have no idea how big of a company KTM is, first of all. Second of all, KTM isn't just KTM. It's owned by Bajaj and some other major ownership. Like CF Moto's got some tie in there. Like
There's a lot of pockets for money to move around into.
Exactly.
Like just because one sliver of the business is down a bit.
They're just going to have to refocus. That's all they're going to have to do. They're not even going to do a
They'll just slow
corporate
down.
restructuring or
They'll
anything.
just slow down.
Yeah,
That's all.
they're just going to refocus. That's all. And not only that, but like at the dealership, I was like, you think KTM's the only one suffering right now?
Everybody is.
Like everybody's sales are down. Like go to a Dodge dealership right now. Tell me what you see. Like Dodge is in such hot water.
Oh.
They're talking about Dodge going out of
Jeep
business.
Wranglers by my house.
Again.
There's a dealership. It's like they have to have on the grass.
Oh yeah, but that ain't nothing. Have you seen like all the photos of all the what do they call it? The overage that they have of supply of like Dodge Rams. There's like
Oh yeah. Well, Ford had the same thing.
giant, huge parking lots stored off. They don't even belong to dealers yet. They still belong to Dodge at that point. And at Kia, when I worked for Kia, we used to call that port. And even though for the Midwest region, where we got the port that we got our cars from Kia came out of Chicago. And I know there's no boat port in Chicago, but that's what they called it. They called it port.
Boat port.
So like, you know, they'd have these huge parking lots, massive, huge parking lots, like unfathomably large parking lots full of thousands and thousands. I mean, they'll have 250,000 trucks there and just sitting there rotting for like a year before they even get shipped to a dealership. Because
There was
that's how
a
little
couple of
supply is
them
moving.
that had that serious problem. And remember back when the chip manufacturer issue? So they had, I think it was Ford. I'm sure it was all of them, but I believe the specific
The
was
media
Ford.
was picking on Ford the most.
And it was a football stadium or some stadium somewhere that the parking lot, they leased half the parking lot to Ford or whatever for this. And it was completely full. They had them out in the grass, everything. And they sat for so long without computers that they actually got damaged via vandals and via, animals
happened.
and all
weather,
that stuff.
That happened in
And they
like
scrapped like
2008
thousands of
too.
vehicles.
It was like, I remember the stories when I worked at Honda was that they had to park cars. They just kept building, and then like rats would eat the harnesses and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Oh yeah. It's a serious deal. Like, and
And that's insane to me that they could build that quantity, continue to build that quantity of cars and park them and not have any plans. Of like
So
had no idea where to go with these things.
It's not that there's not plans. I think it has to do with like profitability in production. They can't shut down production. They have to continue production for some reason, and
Well, 'cause
You
people
don't want to
would
lose your
riot.
labor force.
and labor force. There's like reasons to it, and then for the overage of supply, you'll see that when you start seeing the discounts and the special promos on finance. That's how you know that there's overage on supply. So there's cars sitting somewhere. So when you start seeing those kind of offers come out, the commercials from the manufacturer talking about, oh, there's $6,000 rebate and there's 0% financing for 7 years, and you start seeing that kind of stuff, just picture in your mind that there's a field full of cars somewhere. So that's a tool you can use when you go into a dealership like, hey, I know you've already got this thing marked down, but how much better of a deal are you willing to make to me? In the dealer world, the way it works, is it easier to replace the vehicle or is it easier to replace the customer? That's the decision we make when we price things. If it's easier to replace the customer, like it was over COVID, and it was harder to get a new vehicle, well,
You
guess
could ask
what?
whatever you wanted.
I could ask whatever I wanted.
Sky
and
was the
we
limit.
were. And then on the opposite end of that, if I've got supply, like if I sell a Slingshot, they backfill it in like 3 days. I'm not joking. I think this one came in 3 days. It arrived in our parking lot before they even invoiced us, which is done electronically. That's how much supply they are sitting on.
Yep.
And they want to unload it ASAP. They want it off of their books as soon as possible. So they're shipping these things out the second they sell them. We just have an agreement with Slingshot and with any manufacturer. We have an agreement on how many of them we have to stock.
Yeah.
And we argue over that agreement all the time. They're like,
Well, it costs you money to have them there, so
they're like, we want you to stock 12 of them. And we're like, hell no, we're stocking 6 of them. And they're like, no, we're not doing 6. We'll compromise and you have to stock 9. And we're like, okay, 9. That's kind of how it works. And our agreement's constantly fluctuating. They're always trying to renegotiate our agreement on how many we have to stock. It's annoying.
Slingshots, not cool.
Oh, absolutely not cool. There's nothing cool about that vehicle. It's
have
like
you seen how many LEDs you could put on one of those things?
Yes.
LED,
Yes, I have.
You can put all of
windshield
them.
washer nozzles.
Oh, we were talking about that earlier. That's an LED I can get behind. I miss them, man. I miss the windshield washer squirter nozzles.
You're gonna put them on your soul, aren't you?
Dude, I come from that era. Like, it's a special place in my heart. You put me like a big Wings West kit on a Civic.
Wide body.
No, that was like a Feels kit. I want a Wings West kit. Like a VIS carbon fiber hood, Altezza taillights. Oh my God, dude. This is so good.
APC accessories.
Yeah, the APC cold air intake, that wasn't even like cold air. It didn't even go down into the bumper like the AEM did. It just was just a piece of pipe that stuck off the side. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I can get behind some of that stuff.
You're gonna get it delivered in a red Ford Lightning too.
Well, this isn't Fast and Furious. And Ford Lightnings have gone up in price. The
Everything from the 90s and early 2000s
is
coming
going
in
up.
price.
It's weird, isn't it?
K-body trucks like 10 years ago couldn't give them away. People, you could $1,000, please come take this thing. It's in nice, good shape. Everything works. Now, $20,000-$30,000 for
some
one that's
square
not
bodies?
rusted out, just for a basic ass square body.
Yeah, I know square bodies are going through the roof.
It's insane. Insane price.
But Slingshots, let's just go through the formula here. Style, no. Unique, arguably.
What are we comparing them to?
It's not unique. It's not solely unique. There's a couple other vehicles like it. The Vanderhall,
The Vanderhall
The
is
Riker.
which is definitely the cool one.
the Vanderhall is the most direct as far as competing. The T-Rex, remember that
T-Rex,
thing?
yes.
The T-Rex, but these are like $75,000.
The T-Max.
And they're like custom built and stuff like that. So they're not really a thing.
It's not a production.
I would argue against the Can-Am.
That's a different kind of three-wheeler, I think.
And here's the funny thing
flipped.
about that Can-Am is I actually respect it. Now that I've been around them, I actually respect it.
My buddy has one. He's got an F3 Sport model, flat black.
Yep.
He actually is, I think, trying to get rid of it because him and his mom kind of went together on it because they wanted to share it or whatever. It's before he got a motorcycle, which I told him at the time. I'm like, you should just get a two-wheeled motorcycle. Like, it's way cooler. And he was scared to death of like
Dying.
holding it up and like doing the whole balance. He didn't understand that it just works. You just get on it, it just works. But that thing, 1300cc engine,
Rips.
has an irresponsible amount of power.
Are they rear drive?
Yes.
And the Riker
car
900 is also a ripper, surprisingly, like weirdly so. But are they cool? No, they're not cool. But I do respect them, and I do feel like that there is purpose for them in the market.
If there ever was a cool one, the new touring model that they make is
It's for
actually
cool old people.
like
no,
that would be the one to
they will never be
own.
cool.
I see a lot of old people.
Yeah,
on
well, because you don't have to
Can-Ams.
hold it up, but they can spend less and buy one of those, and they can get one that's fully automatic, has tons of bells and whistles for less money than they can buy a
But
trike.
Barb
like
would never get on the back.
a
of
Harley
Can-Am.
trike.
Barb would only get on the back.
Well, the Harley
of
trike's
a trike.
absurd. The
Yes.
Harley trike is absurd.
Yeah.
That's the only thing Barb will get.
Do you know how much
on.
those things cost?
$1 million.
They're like 50.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Before you get into accessories, which
Oh,
are
yeah.
another 25
The
fringe.
the reason I respect the Can-Am though is that I say it has a purpose in the market. You don't have to hold it up. It is automatic. It's twist and go. There's not even a front brake lever on your hand. There's only the foot brake, and it operates all three wheels.
It's like car brakes.
Yeah, it's like car brakes. And the reason I say that it has a place in the market is for folks that have never ridden a motorcycle that still want like that kind of feel. It's the best thing in the market to give those folks that. And
People
that's why
that
I
can't
respect
have
it.
a two-wheeled version.
For whatever reason, if it's just because you're afraid to try a two-wheel, or if you have a physical ailment like you're missing a leg or something like that, or you're just old and you can't hold up a big bike anymore, that happens too. But
Yeah, tell us about it.
what?
You're the old one.
I'm not that old. I'm not like Can-Am old.
Maybe next year.
Maybe I started getting grays in over here. Yeah, like it serves that part of the market very well. And riding one of those compared to riding any other trike on the market, it's a no-brainer. They ride so much better and they're so much safer than the other trikes. One wheel in the front and two wheels in the back is like,
Not good.
it's honestly one of the worst things I've ever ridden. It was a 2021 Harley CVO Tri-Glide, MSRP $55,000 for this thing. And it was the worst handled bar vehicle I've ever ridden in my life. It was, I didn't even leave the parking lot. I was honestly, I thought it was so sketchy that I wasn't willing to leave the parking lot.
Did you see the original Top Gear Reliant Robin
Oh,
episode?
yeah, that's such a good one.
That's a great bit.
But I mean, I think that's probably tippier than a Tri-Glide.
Like the Tri-Glide,
Because I think the center of gravity on the Reliant Robin is probably a little bit higher because of the
yeah.
superstructure.
The rear
but
wheel, the wheelbase in the rear wasn't very wide on the Reliant Robin either. So
in relation
it was long.
to its,
It was long front to back and not very wide in the rear. So yeah, very easy to tip one of those.
But like, can we get one?
A Reliant
I wish.
Robin.
Yes.
they weren't imported to the U.S.
Yeah,
so
if you can find one, good
I
luck.
mean, they're older than 25 years now. If we can find one, we can
yeah,
get it.
I'm sure some import sites are importing them now.
I'm sure they're all have been on their roofs by now.
You can do wheelies with them.
Yes. I'm sure you can do. Well, are they rear drive or front?
Rear.
Okay.
So yeah, the Harley Tri-Glides and bikes of that ilk, whether it's a converted Goldwing trike or a converted Indian trike or whatever.
Honda had
With
the
fringe.
ATC model line back in the 80s. And
Garbage.
they discontinued it all
Because it's dangerous.
because it was dangerous. Like that was the only they sold good. People bought tons of them things. You can still buy them now. You can go on Facebook and buy all kinds of them.
the reason that Honda sold a ton of them wasn't because they were 3-wheelers.
ATVs weren't really a big
It's because
thing back then.
4-wheelers didn't exist.
Yeah, that
In
was
fact,
that was the ATV
the
of the
reason
time.
the 4-wheeler exists is because the 3-wheeler failed.
Because it was dangerous.
Because it was dangerous as shit. So
Horrible.
they came out with the 4-wheeler, like, hey, 3 wheels didn't work. Let's make it a 4-wheeler.
I had one. I had one of the like the little 90 ones. It was just a small one. It was like the kids one. It was so easy to flip.
Oh yeah, like every time.
Like first gear, let on the clutch, just get it going. All you had to do was turn the wheel and kind of lean a little bit. You go right over. Easy as pop. I mean, I can't believe they sold for as long as they sold for. It was so dangerous.
All right, so give me a cool motorcycle that's not obvious. Because, I mean, you always go like Aprilia Tuono. Yeah, it's cool. We know. But,
is it?
yeah, absolutely. In every regard. You ever heard one? You've never heard the sound
think
an
so.
Aprilia Tuono V4 makes? It's like the sexiest sound a motor's ever made.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. But we know that bike is cool, so it's like that's 2 nail on the head, right on the head of the nail. But like, give me a motorcycle that you think is genuinely cool that you'd like to make an argument for. And it can be something like not so mainstream. It can be outside of mainstream.
We've talked about a lot of things today already.
So one thing outside of mainstream, because I've got 2 in my head right now, and since I'm the nut that likes all these weird bikes, one is a B-Moda Tessie 3D.
Well, I don't think a normal person knows what that is.
If you don't know what it is, then you need to look it up, because a
Get cultured.
B-Moda Tessa 3D is incredible. And I don't think I even need to argue for why it's cool, because it has style. It is unique. Popular, not to normal folks. It wouldn't be. It's to
what? Say that again.
B-Moda Tessie 3D. Tesi. Tessie 3D.
No.
It doesn't have a fork. It has a swing arm. Look, the handlebars, they're just floating. They're not connected to the front wheel.
I see.
That's incredible. It has a Ducati engine in it. Bespoke, hand-built Italian machine.
So when are you going to buy it?
Oh, if I could afford one.
$100,000.
Yeah,
to
they're like
work.
$100,000.
This one's on Iconic and it's sold for $37,500.
Yeah, used. It's probably 10, 15 years old.
Is it functional? That's another thing.
Absolutely. They actually say that they work really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard from multiple people that they work really well. And there's argument for the front end that they have. I forget what that front end's called, like a cantilever front end. It might be called something different.
Cantilever. Candylever.
Yeah, it's made out of candy
I'm
canes.
from Hamilton,
Candy
man. Like
levers.
that's how we say stuff. That front end is arguably could possibly be better than a telescopic fork in an engineering sense. The problem with that front end is it's so complicated,
It's heavier.
but that's what ultimately could make it possibly better, because you can adjust everything and you can adjust out all of the bad stuff a telescopic fork does. Like a telescopic fork flexes under braking, and when you flex under brake, you run into a lot of stiction. Well, that thing doesn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do with that front end as far as adjustability goes. Like, you could even start thinking in terms of camber caster and stuff like that. And like, yeah, they have adjustable linkage for all that stuff. So that's pretty slick. The other bike I have in mind is probably another one you've never heard of, Nick. You may have never heard of this one either.
I have Uncle Google ready.
It is an MZ Bagheera.
Yeah, I've heard of
MZ.
that. Yeah, the Bagheera.
Yeah, MZ.
Bagheera.
Yep. The MZ Bagheera is a supermoto. It's a little heavy, about 400 pounds.
With a 660 Aprilia engine.
No, that was a Yamaha engine.
Well, it says it's 660.
It's a 660 Raptor engine out of a Yamaha quad. except in the Bagheera, it didn't have reverse. So you don't get a reverse gear.
The Raptors didn't have reverse either.
Yeah, they did.
Not the early ones.
660 Raptors did.
The only bike with a reverse gear is a Ural.
No, that's untrue. Goldwings, BMWs, there's all kinds of bikes with reverse gears.
Real reverse?
Real reverse? There is a bike with a real reverse gear. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but you actually have to clutch. Fucking weird. Like that's just
So
a crash
why is
waiting
an
to happen.
MZ Bagheera 660 cool? Explain to me, because it looks pretty mainstream.
So MZ is a company that happened to fall on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall. And when the Iron Curtain fell, or when the Iron Curtain went up, MZ got trapped in communism. And what's funny about MZ is even though they were trapped in communism and stuck making like,
Crap.
the
A Trabant.
the Yugo of motorcycles, they were stuck in that crap. MZ invented modern sport bikes during that time. And what I mean by that is this is back in like the 50s. This is post World War II, start of the Cold War era. MZ took a 2-stroke engine and they put a power valve in it and they did like transfer port stuff. And they basically invented the modern 2-stroke engine. And at that time, MotoGP, what they didn't call it MotoGP back then, but what we know of as MotoGP now, the only stipulation as far as performance was concerned with MotoGP was it had to be a single cylinder, max capacity 500 cc's. So everybody back then, Honda was like the only one running like 4 strokes, but there were other companies experimenting with 4 strokes. Most companies ran 2 strokes. And then MZ took the 2-stroke and basically doubled the horsepower per capacity. So you took a 500 cc engine that was making 30 horsepower, and all of a sudden they're making 60 horsepower out of the thing. And they were the only company on the planet at the time doing it. They invented it. It got so bad because they were just dominating.
Yeah, they change all the rules.
Well, Suzuki, apparently there's like some big story. There's someone from Suzuki. They hopped the wall and they snuck into East Germany during Cold War era. Like, do you know how deadly that is?
How desperate was Suzuki to put a guy and do that? How much did they have to pay him to do that?
To steal 2-stroke technology from MZ. So like, and then he brought it back to, the Western world and then introduced it in Suzuki's. And then you get the Japanese era. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the Japanese era started from technology stolen from MZ in East Germany during the Cold War era.
So what you're saying is communism created
The sport
motorcycles.
bike. The sport bike.
Created modern day motorcycles.
Well,
But,
yeah, because they couldn't afford cars.
But the company's lineage and its history is interesting. They failed as a motorcycle company after the wall fell. They just could never quite grasp capitalism and never could quite grasp how to efficiently produce anything. I mean, Ural went through that still kind of to this day. They don't know how to produce anything under a capitalistic system because they don't know how to be profitable.
Urals are so expensive.
And here's the funny thing. They don't make like a dime selling any of them because they can't figure out how to cheapen costs. Typical, communistic production style problems. But the reason I like the MZ so much is it's actually a really stable supermoto chassis and it works really well on the road. And then they decided not to put in some weird motor. They used a Raptor 660 engine, which is like, it's like insane. Like it's a very available engine. They've been around a long time. They've built thousands and thousands of these things. Hell, I bought a Raptor 660 to rebuild to flip. I don't like quads, but I figured if I could make some money on this thing. And seriously, it was the cheapest engine I've ever had to rebuild. I put a big bore kit in it, turned it from a Raptor 660 to a Raptor 686. The big bore kit with the piston, with everything that I needed was less than like $300. It was like crazy cheap to rebuild this thing. And I ended up having to put a crank in the thing. And I think the crank kit was like super cheap as well. Like everything about, I put an exhaust on it for like less than $100. Like it was like crazy cheap to work on this thing. And I was really impressed by that. And that's what always made me think of the MZ Bagheera is it's got the Raptor 660 engine. And I was like, man, you could like really build that bike up for very affordable. And then if you start talking about like an exotic that is from a company that's no longer, you know, oh, what's it going to be like to live with and like actually maintain and stuff? It's a Raptor 660 engine, man. Like you're good. You're fine. It's cool.
I just want to say that thinking about that kind of makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Why?
That there's a stupid quad engine in a motorcycle that is even being considered as being cool.
I love it, man. A good buddy of mine had an MZ Bagheera, and it was his favorite bike he's ever owned. He said he didn't know what it was about it. It's kind of heavy for a supermoto. Because it was a Raptor 660 engine, it wasn't the most powerful thing on the planet. But he said it just worked really well. It had plenty of power for what he needed it for. He said he never felt front end stability like that. He's like, the front end was just planted. Like it was just, the front tire was there. It felt very confident. So I don't know. I think it was a cool bike, and it's an exotic. So that has a cool factor too.
Well, did we run it through the list? The formula here?
Stylish. What do you think, Nick? You got the picture up.
Hold on.
MZ Bagheera.
I suppose.
Unique. Absolutely. We've already gone through that. Popular? No. Functional? Yes. So 3/4. I'll give it the 3/4 go. That's a at least where I went to high school, that's a passing grade.
75%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a solid C. Did all right. C for cool.
There we go.
That was my motto. I made C's in high school. It was cool enough for me.
D is for degree.
Well, I guess that about wraps it up then.
Do we have to pick the most cool of our list?
If you want to. What's the most cool of our list?
Well, which
In
ones
your
were
opinion?
100%?
Hmm?
Which ones went 100%?
Vespa.
The Vespa.
The Vespa. I'll tip of the hat right there. That was a good suggestion.
The, what was it? The Buell.
Buell, yeah. Functionality wise.
We had to stretch it, but...
Functionality was the only stretch, though.
So I guess what? That's...
Not the Z900 RS.
No.
I don't know. I kind of think the scooter should take it.
SV650?
No.
I don't know.
That's so near and dear to the heart, though. Like,
A few people.
So,
Not me.
all right, Nick, if you had an amount of money in your pocket, $4,000, okay, $4,000 in your pocket right now, I held a gun to your head and said, you have to buy a motorcycle. Oh, and by the way, it has to be a Vespa or an SV650. Gun to your head. Go.
I'd buy a stretch Gixxter 600.
No, you have to buy one of these two. Go.
Well, I think that if $4,000 scooter, Vespa, it'd be pretty fucking nice.
So at an SV650, that buys you a hell of an SV650.
But it's not a scooter.
So I'd buy an SV650, and then I'd pay $2,500 for it, because that's about what they go for. A nice one.
And then you'd buy a People 300 GTI
And then
for
you could take the rest of the
$1,400.
money and do literally anything. You could buy a cheap Vespa. So you could get both for $1,400.
$1,400 Vespa. I don't know if that exists.
Or you could pimp out your SV650. It'd make a slick
I'd get you a
pimped out
couple set of track tires. You
So-
just do the front end, and then you're good.
one. Absolutely. I would rather have an SV650 in my garage than a Vespa. I still would rather, like, if I had 0 motorcycles.
Well, I guess if I only had to have one, then I would want a real motorcycle and not a scooter.
There you go.
I think he needs to ride an SV650.
You do.
Then he would understand.
It may happen. We'll see.
We might have to pick one up as a project.
Get one into the dealership.
Oh, I don't care about the dealership. I'm talking about right back there.
You want to get one in your own fleet?
Yeah.
It's a good bike.
Jessica wants
It
one
really
too.
is. And you could get one for next to nothing and just go through the whole thing for next to nothing.
I want to make it
there's
into
about
like
a billion of them.
a little road ripper. I wanted to make it like a little road ripper out of it. That's like what I think I would want to do, and then be able to do track days and whatnot. But it'd be cool.
And we're talking over the music because
Why not? Vespas, while cool, I don't want to own one.
Here we go.